Good evening. We are thrilled to be hosting this important event tonight, and we're excited that all of you can join us. We hope you leave with a better understanding of how the mayor's office can support our district being able to actually achieve those dreams of excellence.
Please join me in giving a warm welcome as we invite Alexis Madrigal to the stage.
Our first candidate is, of course, also the mayor of San Francisco. Please welcome London Breed. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah. So you're a product of San Francisco public schools. Was this school your rival? Did you love this school? You ever set foot in this school?
Oh, I went to Galileo High School. You know I must want to be mayor because being here at Washington High School, I would have never been able to live it down. But Washington was our biggest rival. And I miss those days. It's interesting because me and friends and people we went to school with, we still have reunions because a lot of us lived in the same neighborhood. And so all we do is fight the whole time. And it's like the eagle eating the lion and the lion eating the eagle. And we have a good time. But back then, it used to be really fun.
In the more serious realm, are you satisfied with the way that the district has been run during your tenure as mayor?
I would say definitely not, because the payroll system, the challenges around communication, the priorities that happen, especially during the pandemic, there have been a lot of challenging times, but more importantly, what we have tried to do in working with the school district is not just offer financial support because of the voters of San Francisco, but we've also tried to offer guidance and support from people with the kind of expertise that could help deal with the challenges from the administrative perspective.
What does that look like in practice?
Well, especially when the payroll system was very much problematic, I would have loved to have taken the entire city's payroll team, which I did offer, to go into the school district and to help facilitate that, because, you don't mess around with people's paycheck. And we sent in resources to work with the superintendent, but unfortunately, the difficulty in being able to control it has been problematic, so much so that one of the solutions I offered was, why not allow for the school district's payroll system to be run through the city, because we have a system that exists that is a very well-known, we don't have those kinds of problems, but again, we don't control it, but we do try to offer solutions with the school district, try to offer opportunities to make sure that they have the capacity necessary to implement the things that are most important, because when we make these mistakes, even if I'm not in charge of the school, our kids suffer, our educators suffer, our families suffer. And so no matter what, it's always important to offer the resources necessary to get to a better place. And that's what we've done in order to help the school district time and time again.
One of the questions that came up over and over from SF Parents Coalition was the use of resources to support schools as we've seen mental health problems and public safety concerns rise in schools. How do you see the city deploying more resources, or deploying its resources in general, to helping with those problems in schools?
So again, thanks to the voters, the city has money that's specifically earmarked for the school district. But as mayor, from day one, from the very beginning, I actually went above and beyond, because my goal was to get mental health support in every school in the school district. They had a number of wellness centers in some schools, but not all. So I gave additional money to the school district to add more, because, and this is before the pandemic, The pandemic, we need them now more than ever, but this is before the pandemic, and it did take some time for those wellness centers to get set up. They have to hire staff and make sure they have the resources to do them. And that is the thing that the city should always do, especially after the pandemic, where we know they're needed now more than ever. When I was at Galileo High School, I remember many challenges. I mean, as a teenager, you go through things. And we didn't always have a safe, comfortable community to run home to talk about this. We had a program called Peer Resource, and we had counselors. We didn't even know they were counselors, but they were people who were always available to us to talk about things that we would go through as teenagers and what that meant and how we can get support. So when young people aren't in the most comfortable situation and they need someone to talk to, they should always have somebody to go to. And that's why wellness centers in every public school in this city is important to me and why I invested money to make it happen.
You mentioned staffing. I think got the numbers here. At the start of the school year, the district had over 100 teacher vacancies, dozens of job openings on the SFUSD website. And of course, we know teacher shortages are a national problem, but what can we do here, like specific policies to make this place a friendlier place, a place that can attract both teachers and staff to the schools?
Well, I know that pay is a big part of the challenge that the educators experience and the cost of living, especially in San Francisco. I think that if people had more housing security, it would be possible, which is why I'm very aggressive about our housing production plans. I know that people talk about educator housing, and I'm so grateful and excited about Shirley Chisholm Village, 135 units for educator housing and people who work for the school district. But ultimately, we need to build housing all over the city because the people that we're able to attract and to retain to live for the district need affordable places to live. And more importantly, when our young people become adults, where are they going to go? And that has been the big challenge in San Francisco. Everything has been about saying no to housing or making it difficult or charging more fees. And now that we have new state laws locally, we can't interfere. And I think that's a good thing because it makes it such that we avoid the obstruction and we get to building housing everywhere in San Francisco as aggressive as we can because all roads lead to housing security, housing affordability, and access to housing overall so that we can attract and retain people to not only work for the school district, but journalists, people to work for the city and county of San Francisco. Many of the people I grew up with have left San Francisco, and it has everything to do with housing. Do they want to live in the city? Of course they do. But we have to be more aggressive with housing production, and that will be a big part of helping us to solve this problem.
Are there specific things that need to be done for homeless families who have kids who are in school, maybe living in their cars or in other kinds of couch surfing, other kinds of very, very difficult housing situations? And what are the sort of specific things that you think those families need?
So more recently in Stonestown, in the area of Stonestown, we had a number of families who were living in their RVs. And so we had been going out to this area for the past couple of years, offering support, offering vouchers, because many of these families are hardworking families. Their kids are in schools in San Francisco, and they want an opportunity. And when we made it much more difficult for a lot of the RVs to be in the area because for a number of reasons, we had to go there. Then when we offered these vouchers that we had available, because we always offer an opportunity for people to come inside. And I think the biggest concern is if I come inside and I give up my RV, can I sustain the payments for rent? And plus, they want to stay in the neighborhood that they're in. We were able to work with each of those individual families who ended up taking us up on our offer, and we ended up moving them indoors. And it was not an easy process, and we did it on an individual by individual basis, and many of those families were limited English, and so we had to bring in people who spoke their language in order to help them. And this is the work that the city does. We approach it from compassion, and it is not easy. Because here's the thing, it's we get migrant families who come into San Francisco. We have other families who are already here, and in some cases, we've used one of our school sites as a shelter. More recently, one of those families who was sleeping at that school site that we were providing as a shelter, finally, because of some housing that we had built, we were able, because they were a homeless family, we were able to give them the right of first refusal. And so I think that there are a lot of tools out there. There's a lot of support. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's possible. And sometimes people have the impression that we are just leaving people on the streets when in fact we are doing everything we can to work with people to give them the right of first refusal, to get them indoors and to get them the help and the support that they need.
Do you think more school sites should be used as shelter for families?
I think that, the good news for us to a certain extent is based on our current shelter capacity for families, we're not seeing those other than one school site be at capacity. So we have other shelter options and they don't have to be schools. But I do think if school sites are open to the opportunity and we have the financial support to make it so, we should. But my first priority is not to move those folks from an RV into a shelter. We move them directly into housing. And through my relationships with the federal government, the president, the vice president, we have gotten so much more help with our housing vouchers. And those have been really a game changer and why we've been able to get people directly into housing instead of shelter.
I'm going to give you our last minute here. And
It's been a minute?
It's been 15 minutes. I know, it goes fast. I told you, it's going to go fast. Last minute here to kind of lay out your vision. Each candidate is going to kind of get this. So I want to give you the exact same prompt for each candidate here. And it's, how will you use city resources and policies to support the educational needs of San Francisco's children and families?
Well, I would just say that from day one, I have made investments in mental health support, and retention bonuses for teachers at some of our lowest performing schools. I've worked very closely with the school district in order to meet their challenging financial situations, not only with the $120 million that the city invests through PEEF and the Success Fund, but also the Department of Children, Youth and Family and many of our after-school programs and what we do with our Beacon Centers and other things. They work hand in hand with our school system to try and ensure that there's a direct connection between our schools and what our kids need and how we ensure that the investments are the right investments to make. My goal is to continue to do that. But more importantly, there has to be some level of structural change within the school district. The school district, just like the city and county of San Francisco, has a mayor and it has a city administrator. The school district needs a district administrator at a higher level in order to administer and manage all of the challenges that exist within the finance to ensure success. And we need to make sure that their financial department, their controller department, similar to the way the city is run in order to deal with the financial assets of the district to ensure financial long-term stability and success. Part of the resources that we can provide from the city can help support and pay for those things. I will always prioritize investing in our young people. I will always make sure that we are doing innovative things like Opportunities for All. It's the first program I started as mayor where every high school student in the city can get a paid internship during the summer to learn about different industries where young people can apply for scholarship opportunities. We have to be more concerned about what is happening, not just with our children, but with other people's children too, in order to ensure their success. And they never end up in a situation where they can't make a decision about what their future would entail based on their natural abilities. The schools are designed to ensure that our children are successful. And fortunately, when I think about my experience, I was so blessed to have great teachers, to have great support systems, and to have other students that I was engaged with in my school that helped paved the way for me for things that I didn't even think were possible. I didn't know much about what college is, and a career counselor helped me with fee waivers and vouchers and support to get me through that process. I ended up going to UC Davis. It wasn't just because of me, it was because someone believed in me. We have to restore the support and the people that support our children and give them the tools and the support they need in order to help uplift them. It takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of investment, and it also takes a willingness to make hard decisions in order to get to that place. It is what I've been doing with the appointments I made to the school district, with the work I continue to try to do with the superintendent. It was what I did during the pandemic when the schools would not open when they could have based on data, and we set up hubs, learning hubs for our students. I will always put our kids first and do everything I can to ensure their long-term success and to make sure every kid in this city has a chance to succeed no matter what.
Thank you very much, Mayor London Breed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I want to bring up our next candidate, District 11 Supervisor Ahsha Safai. Welcome, Supervisor. Mic's on and everything. You're all ready to go.
Hot mic.
Hot mic, exactly. Let's start here with you. You know, a lot of people with growing families leave the city when their kids reach kind of school age. They're heading into kindergarten. What would you say to that family to keep them in the city and in the public school system?
So my kids went to in school in Potrero, Daniel Webster Elementary, and one of the biggest draws for us was that it was a Spanish immersion elementary school, had that track. I know they have Mandarin immersion at Star King and a number of different elementary schools. We have Italian, we have Japanese. We have so many things, tracks like that I think make San Francisco so competitive in that way. So that's what I would tell to a family that thinks about going to another place or looking at another public school option, is that we have that option here in San Francisco, and it makes it one of the more special public education opportunities in the Bay Area.
Do you see any tension between those types of programs, you know, the special language programs or other things that we kind of stick into schools to make them more attractive to families that might otherwise consider private schools, and just providing like a baseline quality education for everybody?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, some of those struggles and growing pains were there at our own school. You know, they definitely, you saw two different tracks. And to your point, having a wonderful literacy, wonderful, language program. I was and have been one of the biggest advocates for the Student Success Fund. I did that with Supervisor Hillary Ronan and Myrna Melgar, and it was a struggle to get it on the ballot because there was some difference of opinions on how that should be approached. Ultimately, we got an 11-0 vote, but what it did was, and we will reaffirm that and make sure that that's there for the next 15 to 20 years, is that we can do math literacy, English literacy in school, after school support. And 100%, if I don't do anything else as an elected official, that is my proudest achievement, being able to set baseline up to $60 million in, as you said, ensuring that they have wonderful quality education. And part of the reason why we did that is because there are schools that have only a PTA budget of maybe a few $100s, $5,000. Guadalupe Elementary, around the corner from my house, couldn't even raise the money to finish their mosaic tile mural on the outside of their building. They didn't have enough money for that. And yet there are schools in other parts of the city that have PTA budgets of $500,000 or more. So this is intended to be the great equalizer. Schools can apply to up to $1 million grants, and much of that money has already started to go out. And so that's what I would say to those families as well, to creating a quality education across the board.
You know, one of the other factors that parents consider in sending their kids to different schools, that the safety that they feel exists for their children at those schools. I think very reasonable. I think, I worry about that with my own kids, and I'm sure everyone here worries about that as well. Do you advocate for more security in schools? Like, what's the right answer to, not just public safety, but actually safety in our schools as well?
I think the way you deal with safety is you have better engagement programs, extracurricular programs, on-site programs. I mean, we at Balboa High in my district, for example, we have Community Youth Center, CYC, we have United Players, we have a number of different nonprofit groups and programs that are there on site engaging with the students and kids to ensure that they have all different types of options, that they can engage them. I think that's the best way to ensure that you have security. I mean, of course, everyone wants their school and their environment to be safe for their kid. But I think the way you do that is you engage the students and you give them the different options, whether it's sports, whether it's arts, whether it's employment training opportunities, whatever it may be, engaging them is the best way to ensure you have a good, solid, safe environment at a school.
You've highlighted on the campaign trail your background as a city planner, master's from MIT in urban planning. What role do you see transit and schools kind of playing together? Like, do you see transit as part of what makes schools more accessible to parents who, sometimes get lotteried into, schools that are very far away from them?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's what makes for an urban education, not just in the classroom, but being familiar with the urban environment and having a good public transportation system that lines up with and supports our schools. You could be a kid in the Excelsior that's coming here to Washington, and you're going to probably have to ride the 43 and be familiar with ensuring that you can get crosstown in as quick manner as possible, and then communicating with your family, making sure that you're on your way home and they know that you're safe and sound, all those things. So yes, lining up public transportation to schools that might be far away and ensuring that it fits in, melds in, is the right way to support our schools and support our families.
You've argued that Jeff Tumlin, the head of Muni, should be fired, and that would be a key component of your plan. How will changing leadership improve Muni? And, will announcing that you're willing to can the guy before make it more difficult to hire the next incoming leader?
I don't think so. Listen, I met with the transit operators the other day. They don't feel like they have a voice, that they're listened to and heard. There's a lot of frontline workers that we work with during COVID, during the transition back to opening up our economy, that don't feel like they're being heard. There's a real separation between management and a lot of the frontline workers. And so, listen, I represent a part of town that's predominantly working in middle-class families. Many of them work for the MTA. Many of them have for decades, and they've committed their careers to that. And so I don't say it lightly, saying that we need to replace the head of the MTA. We want someone that is engaged, listens to and understands not just community, but the frontline workforce, and can balance out all the different needs, small businesses, transit activists, advocates, small business owners, pedestrians, all of the different, the multitude of transportation needs we have in the city. I mean, look at the Valencia Street Corridor, look at the project on Terraville. These projects require a different level of management. And it's part of the reason why I talk about taking the construction management responsibilities away from the MTA, shifting them over to public works, so the MTA can focus better on what it does best and what it needs to do better, and that is public transportation.
Where are you on the school closures?
Listen, we have to do everything we can to avoid school closures. It is going to create a significant amount of disruption. Obviously, that list was going to come out this week. It's been postponed until next month. I wouldn't be surprised if it got postponed again. I don't know anything about it. I haven't been given any heads up, so I'm not saying anything that I have some inside information. I just know that these are not easy conversations to have. And as I've been out on the campaign trail, I've heard from so many different communities that talk about the wonderful aspects of their school and how threatened and how discouraged they feel to hear that they might be on the list, that they're rumored to be on the list. So we have to do everything we can to avoid. I mean, I would rather see a plan where we talk about restructuring the size of some of our middle schools, shifting over to more K through 8 models in the city. There's a lot of other things that we could do rather than shutting down the schools. So I am going to do everything I can to ensure that the southeast part of the city, which is disproportionate working families, not high resourced, are not the ones that are the most impacted. I've made that commitment. And we've heard things like it's going to be all over the city. The closures and the pain, for lack of a better word, is going to be all over the city. But I think that there needs to be a real robust conversation.
As mayor, what transparency would you ask for from the school district in terms of their decision-making process about which schools are closed?
You know, listen, that's one of the things, that's why I go back to the Student Success Fund. That is going to be up to $60 million a year to provide support for our schools that are most in need across San Francisco, that will allow for there to be real investment and support integrated into the schools that are most in need. The mayor and the mayor's position has a lot of access to private philanthropy, our general fund, all different types of sources of funds and money. They can sit down, they can help to lead negotiations between unions and be involved in the conversation with the superintendent and management. And I think that's something that I'm committed to doing as mayor. It's something that I did on the Student Success Fund when it didn't look like it was going to go forward. So absolutely, there's a big role for the mayor to play, not overexerting their authority, but ensuring that they're there to support and help move the conversation forward in a productive way.
Yeah, I think my question is more around what families deserve to know about how schools were closed.
And so I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
If you're going to have a conversation about, let's say there's, 3 schools that are on the list, and those communities are impacted, to find out, October, that by the end of the year your school is going to shut down, there needs to be robust community outreach conversations, and the mayor's office needs to be deeply involved in that. One of the things that under this mayor that was eliminated that I would bring back is the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Services. Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Services played a significant role in being the eyes and ears of the mayor, ensuring that the mayor's office was out in the neighborhoods and community and involved in all of the different important conversations like this, to ensure that there's transparency and people have a voice at the table and the voice of the mayor is heard. So that's another thing I've committed to bringing back, and if it were in place right now, would be a major part of ensuring transparency and involvement in these conversations going forward. Yeah. And what the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Services was, just in case people are not familiar, each supervisorial district had at least one liaison from the mayor's office to be there to interface with all the different city agencies. In my district 2 years ago, we recreated that position to focus on quality of life, public safety, to interface with the police department, public works, Department of Homeless Supportive Housing, and we started that position again. Now other supervisorial districts are replicating that model, but on the larger scale, bringing back the Office of Neighborhood Services would absolutely help in situations like these.
Okay, with your last couple minutes here, I'll give you the same question again of how you'll use city resources and policies to support the educational needs of San Francisco's children and families. I think that's your vision for this.
Well, listen, I didn't really get an intro, but I'll just say, I'll just say, no, it's good. I'm glad we jumped right into the questions. The reason I'm running for mayor is to ensure that San Francisco is a city for all San Franciscans. Not just the rich, not just those that are politically connected, but particularly working and middle-class families. It's what I've done for the past 24 years of my career. I worked for Mayor Brown. I worked for Mayor Newsom as a deputy department head, worked at Public Works. I ran my own small business for almost a decade, and I worked with organized labor as well with the janitors union. and I've been on the board now for the past 8 years. So so that's what informed the work that I did with the Student Success Fund, because we had to get the Public Employees Union, we had to get the school district, Department of Children, Youth and Families, and the Board of Supervisors all to the table to negotiate that resolution, because it looked like and almost did not make it to the ballot. Ultimately, we had 11 supervisors supporting it. Unfortunately, the mayor did not support it. And the voters of San Francisco affirmed that. And now we're going to reaffirm it again this fall. So my vision and how I would fund and how I would deliver resources, I've had that track record with the Student Success Fund. It's going to be up to $60 million a year. We're going to continue to support the Public Education Enrichment Fund in any way, shape, or form that we can add additional resources or transparency and oversight in any way we can with the school district. That's my commitment. Listen, I'm a product of public schools all the way K through 12. I went to a very, at the time, which was a commuter, more of a blue collar university. I'm a product of that, and I fundamentally believe in that, and that's why I had that commitment in my career here in San Francisco.
Thank you, Supervisor Ahsha, Safai.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Supervisor Aaron Peskin, welcome.
This sucks. It's true. How are you?
All right. You have said, Supervisor Peskin, that as mayor, I would exert leadership and help the school board balance their budget, help them pay their teachers on time, and help them figure out if they need to close any schools. Sort of specifically, how would you do that from the mayor's chair?
Thank you all for coming tonight and participating in democracy. And Alexis, thank you for the question. I was just having a nice little backstage chat with the mayor, and we were talking about experience. And I said something to the effect of, when my toilet breaks, I prefer to hire a plumber who actually knows how to fix the toilet. I have been doing this for 17 of the last 24 years and have been elected by my colleagues 3 times to be president of the board, by members who were more progressive than me and more moderate than me, to bring people together and to collaborate. And I became, in my first 8 years, a student of some of the more mundane, less sexy aspects of public policy, and worked to collaborate with my colleagues and a number of mayors to grow the city's rainy day reserves, to reduce our deferred pension liability, and to collaborate on making sure that San Francisco continued to enjoy superlative bond ratings by inserting myself and working with the controller. And that's exactly what I would bring to this arena.
So take the example, say, of this payroll debacle that occurred. What was the role you would have liked to have played as the mayor in that?
Well, it's interesting that you raised that, Alexis, because after I saw the same information and teachers were suffering and leaving the district and not being able to pay their rent, I actually picked up the phone and called Lainey Modametti, who I have a very good working relationship with, and said, hey, as your sister agency, how can we help? As a matter of fact, San Francisco, which has a few more employees than the district, about 33,000, recently underwent a payroll modernization. And I sat down with her and Matt Wayne and said, can we give you for free our experts from our Department of Technology to help you troubleshoot this? Had I it to do over again, I would have invited them to avail themselves of our expertise before they went down that perilous path. But the reality is the city of San Francisco has a lot of resources to offer the school district if there is an atmosphere of collaboration that really encourages that partnership and a mature collaboration. And that's what I tried to do after the fact relative to the disaster that was the SFUSD's payroll system.
Do you think that atmosphere currently exists between the city and the school district?
Not to the extent that it should. You know, I was around at the turn of the last century when there was a hue and cry about the San Francisco Unified School District. And we actually, there was a political space that was created where philanthropic and business forces like Warren Hellman, leaders within the school district and historic supporters of the school district and legislators like myself came together and created that space about what we were going to do collectively. That level of partnership doesn't exist as much anymore. And I think some of that tone really has to come from the most widely acknowledged leader in a city, which is the office of a mayor.
So unlike many of your fellow candidates, you have said that you would work to keep schools that SFUSD is considering closing open. How would you do that?
Well, first of all, and this is by SFUSD's own admission, there doesn't seem to be a lot of cost savings here. If you read even the statement that they issued today, it was really about making consolidations not relative to cost savings. And I really think fundamentally, and look, I've made plenty of tough decisions in the last quarter of a century that weren't pleasant decisions to make, but those decisions need to be made in collaboration with the community. I come from a home where my parents were very involved in my public education and in the schools, and they felt a part, and there was a community of folks that not only felt included, but helped a district, in my case, the Berkeley Unified School District, make good decisions. And I don't see that. As a matter of fact, that is belied by the announcement today that on the 18th, we're not going to hear about this, and it's going to be delayed another month, which I think is causing more anxiety and is fundamentally shows that they don't have their act together.
You know, my understanding of the cost savings from closing schools is that they, as you put it, they can consolidate different resources and then do something different with those assets in the schools that are then empty. One of the things that you've said, and is as a proposal at least, is to sell currently or underutilized city and SFUSD properties with the condition that they be used exclusively for new affordable housing. Does that square with the idea of keeping the schools open?
Absolutely. The San Francisco Unified School District, as is the case with the city and county of San Francisco, have an amazing amount of unused and underutilized property, some of it in and around Civic Center. I was together with my then colleague Sandra Lee Fewer, one of the people who pushed to have Francis Scott Key become the Shirley Chisholm Apartments. And we did that in 2019 with a ballot measure to streamline all of the approvals, and then came back in 2020. And I was the supervisor who insisted that we actually put money in a citywide affordable housing bond specifically for that project so that our educators, our paras, and other SFUSD folks could have affordable housing. And that's actually one of the number one things that the city and county of San Francisco can do to help the school district retain teachers, deal with issues of affordability, is to utilize surplus lands for teacher housing.
How much teacher housing you think can be built?
Well, let me say this. Just in and around Civic Center, many of the empty parking lots that you see there are properties of the Unified School District. I mean, the Unified School District owns what is Nordstrom's, the San Francisco Center. That is, since the late 1800s, property of the San Francisco Unified School District. And actually, as the whole debacle around Nordstrom's was going on, there's been interest in that property. And the city of San Francisco actually has some of the best experts on negotiating real estate transactions, getting the most money in the public interest. And I've repeatedly offered those services to the school district, not in a paternalistic sort of way, but really in a partner sort of way for the benefit of the SFUSD. But thousands of units can be built on surplus SFUSD properties.
It's interesting hearing you talking a lot about, building new housing. I think you at least have a reputation as someone who has not always thought building new housing supply was the solution to our, housing affordability woes here in the city. Is that anything that's changed for you, or do you think it's just you're rebalancing your priorities a little?
No, I think it's a mischaracterization of my record. I say at our debates that I have voted to approve more housing than every candidate on this or that stage combined, over 100,000 units all over the city, from Bayview Hunters Point Shipyard to Treasure Island to Park Merced, Rincon Hill, Eastern Neighborhoods, Western Soma, Central Soma. But we have done it by working with neighborhoods and not against neighborhoods, insisting on things like childcare facilities, parks, amenities that make communities whole, minimum percentages of on-site affordable housing. And that has, in certain instances, led me to oppose particular projects. But in my own district, I've built every kind of housing, market rate housing, permanent supportive housing, a homeless center, a transitional aged youth navigation center, turned all of the former freeway parcels into affordable housing. One of them specifically for low-income families, one for formerly homeless people. So I've put my money where my mouth is.
Given all of that, there still is a huge housing affordability crisis in the city. How much more do you think you could do or would do as mayor to make this just bring down the cost of housing for families?
Yeah, our challenge is around affordability, and that is why I have consistently, since I was first elected, including March of this year, voted for and pushed and helped pass affordable housing bonds to the tune of over $1 billion that have gone into thousands and thousands of units of permanently supportive housing. And earlier this year, I was the author of legislation. Perhaps I should have thought of this earlier, but it was pretty innovative, to have the city offer lower interest financing than conventional financing to allow middle income affordable housing to be built. Turns out that the city of San Francisco, which issues tax-exempt revenue bonds all the time for rebuilding our infrastructure, our water delivery system, you name it, we could actually see affordable housing as infrastructure. And that law went into effect 16 days ago. And actually on Friday, I announced the first project of converting the old Warfield Theater into permanently affordable middle-income housing, something that 2 teachers can afford, 2 nurses can afford.
What kind of restrictions have to be in place, or at least criteria have to be in place to ensure that that kind of building ends up being a place where 2 teachers actually do live?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously it has to be in the covenants, in the restrictions. It has to be part of the deed, and it has to remain permanently affordable.
Before I give you a chance to talk about your kind of vision for using city resources as a whole, why don't I just ask, just so people can get a sense of it, how do you get around the city? Like, what's your favorite way? Is it taking a bike, Muni?
Well, we are all creatures of habit, and unless you are running for mayor and bouncing all over the Excelsior and then to the outer Sunset and then to the Mission and then south of Market, I'm a take the 45 over Russian Hill guy and hop onto that just amazing Van Ness 49, which has been an absolute delight.
Nowadays, I assume you have to take a car around.
When you're running for
Moped?
mayor, the hybrid is what you got to have.
So why don't you lay out your vision? I'm going to give it to you again. Use the kind of vision for using city resources and policies to support the educational needs of San Francisco's children and families.
Yeah, let me just tell you a little bit about my own life. I like to tell people that I'm not from here. I am from the East Bay. I'm a Berkeley kid, and I came along in 1964, the son of 2 educators. My father taught at San Francisco State for 40 years in clinical psychology and actually placed his students at Rams here in the Richmond and the Jewish Home and the VA. My mother, a social worker who ran the East Oakland Youth and Family Center. And I'm a K through 12 Berkeley Public Schools kid. And the early formative years were remarkable for me. My recent claim to fame is about 6 weeks ago, the phone started ringing, and it was the New York Times and the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal, and I thought they were interested in the mayor's race, but they wanted my kindergarten, first, second, and third grades with my pictures with my classmate Kamala Harris, and she is not only. Both of us are not only products of that. We were the first fully integrated K through 12 class post Brown versus the board. Berkeley had started integrating their schools before that, but by the time it got to our grade, we were the first class, and it was remarkable. And I actually can show you after this, Alexis, our first grade picture, which is remarkably diverse. And the African-American woman, Frances Wilson, who was our teacher, Kamala actually invited to attend her graduation from UC Law. And that says something. And not only being the child of educators who were public school educators, but in politics, I have realized just how profoundly important, what a kind of sacred underpinning to democracy public education is. And I am a leader who worries about the privatization of public education, which, as my colleague and friend Ahsha Safai said, is the great equalizer. And I worry about the diminution of our public schools. And that's part of the reason why, look, I'm a financial realist. I've balanced the city's budget 17 times in tough years and in good years, and I've made cuts that are really tough. But it's why I start with a bias to keeping our schools open, because I worry that once they're closed, they're never going to be reopened. And I want to attract kids back to our public schools. And I feel that a mayor has a very central collaborative role in being a cheerleader for the school district and harnessing the business community and harnessing the education community, and really bringing everybody together in a collaborative way. And I say that, and I'm proud of the fact that I've been elected by my colleagues, I think more than anybody, to be board president, because yeah, it's a tough business, but ultimately you bring people together to get things done.
Supervisor Aaron Peskin, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Want to introduce next philanthropist, founder, and was CEO of Tipping Point, which worked on poverty alleviation here in the Bay Area. Please welcome Daniel Lurie. It's fun backstage. That's the problem, right? They're all hanging out back there. Sit down. Yeah.
Nice to I don't think we
have met. Yeah,
in
nice to meet
person.
you.
Nice to meet you. Hi, everybody.
All right. Well, let's get right to it.
Okay, wait. Can I just stop you for a sec? My wife and I were talking about what socks I should wear, and you beat me. She had some really colorful ones, and I was like, I gotta keep it toned down.
This is my one. I don't normally dress in a suit. Let's be honest. So this is my one nod to my rest of my life.
I love it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So the district just delayed, we've been talking about it. District has delayed the announcement of which schools are going to be closed. But you have agreed with the district in the past that these closures have to happen. What do you say to families and students who feel like this will be a big loss for their community?
First, I want to thank you all for coming out to hear all of us, and I appreciate your time. It's a difficult time for our school district. It's been a difficult time for our parents and our teachers and our students over the last number of years. Politics has played too big of a role in our public school system. I am grateful that it has taken a step back, that we are starting to focus on student achievement and student outcomes, making sure that we pay our teachers and pay them well and pay them on time. But we have lost 5,000 students over the last 10 years, and we're projected to lose 5,000 more. And I want to make sure that if a student is going to school, that it is fully resourced, that we have enough teachers and janitorial staff and mental health counselors. And if it's going to happen, and it looks like it's going to, I want to make sure that the parents, many of whom are here today, have right of first choice for their neighborhood school, first choice, and we should be doing everything in our power to make sure that if schools do close, the parents and the families are taken care of.
Well, I mean, this transparency question I think is really important around this, which is what do you think parents deserve to know, and what can the mayor make sure that the district provides for parents so that they feel like the process, even if their school is closing, the process was fair, or the process had a logic to it that they could at least follow?
Well, you all know the system incredibly well, so I don't want to talk to the experts here. But the mayor doesn't have direct control over the school district. You have influence, and I am going to use the power of my megaphone as your mayor, starting in January, to speak up and speak out for our students and make sure that we are student-centered, always taking care of our teachers and also taking care of our parents. And so, how I will run my administration is that my department heads are going to make sure to communicate with community. Too often, things are done to community, not with community. And we're seeing that in the school district as well. I think there has been some positive movement over the last few years, or the last, let's call it year, 2 years, with the school board and with Dr. Wayne. But we can always do better communicating, and I will.
I think people want to trust that somebody has, alignment with their values around their children. You grew up in the city, attended the town school for boys, SF University High School. I believe your own children go to, independent or private schools. So what would you tell families to say that, you understand the problems of SF USD, even if your own children are not in the system?
My kids go to private school. My wife and I had a choice to make. We were able to make that choice. Many people in my position made a choice to go to public school. I will just tell you, the past 20 years of my life has been spent serving community, serving the entire Bay Area, providing early childhood options and education to people and children and families, no matter the zip code that they were born into. I helped launch with Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris in Bayview. She came to me in 2007 and told me there was one pediatrician for 10,000 kids in Bayview, Hunters Point. And I mean, if you meet her, you go anywhere she goes, but she and I partnered and we started a children's health clinic called the Bayview Child Health Clinic. We tripled the number of doctors, and then we teamed up with Katie Albright. We teamed up with UCSF to create a full service center around mental health, child abuse prevention, and pediatric care. I'll put my record of serving the community, of providing early childhood education opportunities up against anybody I'm running against. The Vincent Matthews, the past superintendent, he called me during one of the second surges of COVID. And he said, public school teachers are scared to go back to school. It was a Thursday. He said, schools will be closed on Monday. He said, we need PPE, we need tests. Actually worked with Meredith on this. I made about 5-10 calls. By Saturday morning, we had thousands and thousands of tests. We had tens of thousands of PPE, and the public schools stayed open that Monday morning. I will commit myself to making sure that we have a world-class public school system again here in San Francisco.
How do you think it's going to be different if you're, elected mayor, working from the inside with the constraints of, the public systems that you'll be managing, versus what you just described, which is kind of coming from the outside and able to marshal philanthropic resources and put them into play?
I appreciate the question. It is an entity, this city hall, Alexis, that is broken. It is corrupt. We're seeing corruption exploding across our news now, from this mayor and from the former interim mayor, and It is a sign that they think the rules don't apply to them. And I'm here to tell you that change is coming in November. I am going to hold our department heads accountable. We're going to have weekly staff meetings of all of our major department heads. They're going to collaborate, they're going to cooperate, and they're going to communicate with each other, with me, and with you. And if they can't get the job done, I'm going to go find new people. It is the same in the business sector. It's the same in the nonprofit sector. At least how I ran Tipping Point. Accountability was at the core of everything we did. We made sure our nonprofits delivered for the clients and the community that they told us they were delivering. And so we put metrics into every contract that we wrote with every nonprofit, 6 months out, 12 months out. What are the key performance indicators? How are we going to measure? We don't see any of that at City Hall. It doesn't have to get that complicated. But it's broken inside that building, and it needs somebody from outside of it to come in and clean house.
I mean, you mentioned the metrics, and you mentioned, Tipping Point. I mean, one of the marquee initiatives was the sort of chronic homelessness initiative, right? Where you're trying to cut homelessness, chronic homelessness by 50% between 2017 and 2022. That did not happen. So was that a failure of management? Was that, outside forces? Was that like, how do you see that initiative and its management?
We took on an audacious goal. We hit it at the most innovative possible way. We did cut chronic homelessness by 13%. We can always do better. We created a new way of getting housing built. We got housing built, 145 units of 100% affordable housing done in 3 years, $377,000 a unit with good paying union labor. To compare, right now, it's on average 7 years, $1.2 million a unit. The Shirley Chisholm project for our teachers, 135 units here in the Sunset or out in the Sunset. Great project. We need more of them. The only problem with that project is it took 7 years to get done. So the people I'm running against, they talk about, let's get more housing built. Daniel doesn't know how to get things done. They've created such a crazy bureaucracy that we can't build enough housing for our artists and our teachers and our principals. When I am your mayor, I am going to make sure that we get more housing built all over this city on time and on budget.
Give me people I think oftentimes say we need to cut red tape. And sometimes I hear specific instances of this is a regulation that slows things down. So give me a regulation that you could cut, a specific one that would make it easier to build this sort of middle income housing for teachers, say.
Right now, it takes planning. It takes the White House, Kamala Harris, our vice president, hopefully our next president. I'm not allowed, it's a 501c3. I'm not allowed to. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris said that it takes longer to get through permitting here in San Francisco than anywhere else in the country. It takes 33 months, something that these insiders have built up through planning and through Department of Building and Inspections. It can take up to 33 months, okay? DBI right now, 600 days on average. We just had the government come in and take over our planning commission, and they have now said it has to take 180 days at max. So you can come in and you can demand that your planning department, and I will demand that DBI also come in and cut the amount of times that they can start the shot clock over and over again. They can say, oh, you didn't have the right paperwork. They can go back to the back room, take your planning, and you don't know when they're going to get back to you. Under my administration, there are going to be shot clocks put on my departments, not on the applicant, on my departments to get back to the applicant for a small business or for getting housing built. You can demand timeframes that your departments get back to. I will.
Permitting. Applause line. Your campaign has raised over $10 million, almost $5 million of your own money. there's a $500 cap on campaign contributions for other people aside for yourself. Talk to me about how you see financing your campaign yourself to the extent that you have.
I have as many donors, if not more, than any other candidate running in this race. We have well over 3,000 donors. I'm proud of that. I am a person that when he is going for something, I'm going to be all in. And I am all in on running a clean, ethical, moral campaign where you know exactly who and who's behind me. I'm behind myself. I'm committed to this city. I'm committed to this community. I don't know the numbers you're putting together are one is from an outside group that I have nothing to do with. One is just mine. So sure.
Okay, sorry. Yes, an independent expenditure committee, but I mean, family members have donated to it. It's different in campaign finance law. I agree, but there's a lot of money behind your candidacy.
And there's a lot of money behind the other candidates as well. And here's the difference. They've all been in office for nearly 70 years combined. Okay, 70 years, and they have a lot of name recognition. They have a lot of powerful people behind them and different groups behind them. Here's my commitment to you all. Okay. I thought we were talking education tonight, but we can talk about this. I'm good with this. I'm going to take the oath of office on January 8th. I'm going to be your next mayor. And my sole focus will be on serving the taxpayers and the residents, and in this room, the parents and the students here in San Francisco. And I won't owe anybody anything, okay? You have my commitment on that.
Let's just take the last couple minutes and kind of lay out your vision as we've described it here of using city resources and policies to support the educational needs of San Francisco. Your vision. Your vision on using the city's resources to support the educational needs.
I like it, Alexis. An education question. So here is what I will say. You don't have direct control, but you have $200 million a year that you send of the $1.3 billion budget. Okay, there is going to be financial oversight on that. I'm going to make sure that there are strings attached on that. You do have power over Muni, and so I want to make sure that Muni is clean, safe, reliable, that there are rapid Muni lines for you, the parents, to know that your kids can get to and from their schools on time so that buses aren't flying past them at 7:30 in the morning on the way to school or earlier. Department, children, youth, and families. You have oversight and command over hundreds of millions of dollars, and I'm going to surge resources to our public schools to make sure that schools can be not just for the teachers and the children, but also for you, the parents, and that we can have CalFresh and Medi-Cal and mental health counseling. I am going to make sure that we use the power of all the other departments to make sure our schools and the families here are well taken care of. You have my commitment that I am going to stand on the steps of City Hall as often as needs to be to go to bat for you. I just want to, if this is my closing statement, I want to say, you all have done so much. If you're in this room, you have done so much to turn around the culture at so many of our schools. We need to keep fighting. We need to keep focused on student achievement and student outcomes, making sure we're always taking care of our teachers. And you have my commitment that I will be an ally there with you every single day.
Thank you so much. Daniel, Lurie.
I love it.
Let's bring in our final candidate here, Mark Farrell, former interim mayor, former supervisor here in the city. Welcome, Mark Farrell. All right. We're going to talk a little bit more about school closures. Again, on school closures, you have said, this is a school board thing. We have no control over it. Gone through the financials with a number of school board members, gone through the financials with parents. It's going to have to happen. What do you say to the families who are worried about this or feel like it's going to be a real loss to their kids and their community?
I totally understand it. As a parent of 3 young kids, school closures is something that nobody wants to talk about, and I wish we weren't having this conversation about it. But I also think if we're going to be real about the future of the school district, it's going to be part of the equation. And all I can say is, Mayor, to me, what you have in me is someone who's incredibly empathetic towards it, and I think we'll be a listening and a sounding board for the parents as it happens. But it is something that I do believe. So look, from my point of view, this is a situation where I wish we weren't having this discussion. I wish the school district wasn't having to go through this. Obviously, it stems from years of history of financial mismanagement. But it's going to be part of the process going forward. And all I can say is, from a mayor's perspective, I want to be the most proactive mayor supporting our public school families, period. I'm happy to talk through those details with you. But to me, as this process unfolds, again, I want to be incredibly proactive out of City Hall as mayor in support of our public school families.
What can you do about financial mismanagement? And can you point to a couple of specific instances where you say the district should have done this and not that?
Look, I'm not going to get into the weeds about specifics of what the school district did or did not do from a board perspective within the financial kind of purview over the last few years. Obviously, with the foresight of seeing this, with the enrollment declining and so forth, this is part of the equation. Again, though, from my point of view, the question becomes, as mayor, given there's a separate school board, what can you expect, or what can public school parents or public school families expect out of Mark Farrell as a mayor in support of public schools and public school families? To me, that's the real question. I'm not, again, I don't know how helpful it would be to do a kind of a history lesson in terms of financial issues. They are what they are. It's like housing here in San Francisco. Unfortunately, the state's coming over our back and taking some form of control. So the question is, how do we move forward? And what do you want out of a mayor inside of City Hall supporting our public school families?
What do you think people want out of a mayor supporting their public school families?
I think San Franciscans want a leader, finally. We need a leader inside of San Francisco, inside of City Hall as mayor, in my opinion, on all of the core issues: public safety, street conditions, the economy. But I've been very public in saying I want San Francisco to be the best place in the world to raise a family. I think we're far away from that today. Public school system is a big part of that. But we don't even have that dialogue out of City Hall right now. What's it like to be a parent in San Francisco? What's it like to be a kid? What can we do to make life better? And just have that active dialogue inside of City Hall. It's missing, in my opinion, today. And it's something we can easily bring back. And I can mention example after example when I was in office before. I'll give you one quick one. When I was a supervisor, represented District 2, we used to do outdoor movie night in the Presidio once a month. It's very cheap, very easy to do. Brought out the big screen, throw on the Disney movie. It was for younger kids, so teenagers didn't hang around really. But we brought out food trucks, and we had families come. We had about 1,000 people every time we did it. And when it was cold and wet, because we're San Francisco, we partnered with the YMCA, brought it indoors into the gym. And it was just a chance to build community as parents, as kids. So easy, so simple. We should be doing that in every neighborhood in San Francisco every single month, in my point of view.
Do you think there's a tension between supporting the neighborhoods, with the full extent of the city, and kind of fixing the structural problems of downtown San Francisco right now, and what resources it might need given the massive loss of foot traffic into the downtown business district?
I don't think there's tension. I think the core 2 main issues apply to both: public safety and street conditions. And by street conditions, I think about the homeless. I think about those suffering from drug addiction on our streets. Those issues are the number one issues facing downtown. Generically speaking, it's the reason why conventions left San Francisco. It's not because we lost our natural beauty as a city. And even though it was dark here walking up, I know the football field at Wash is the most scenic football field, I think, in our country, overlooking the Gongay Bridge. We have an amazing city. We have amazing neighborhoods to visit. It's that people are feeling threatened on the way from the Moscone Center to their hotels. Those issues hamper our commercial corridors in our neighborhoods as well. And we live very close to here, so Clement's our nearest commercial corridor. Talk to so many small business owners, and that's endemic of everywhere else. Clement used to be open until 10 at night. And most restaurants are closing at 8 at 8:30 right now. They said, we just don't have enough customers right now. People don't feel safe kind of being out later. That's a shame, but that can be turned around as well. It just takes proactive leadership and prioritizing that as an issue from the mayor's office.
You know, one of the achievements that that you've talked about in your campaign were the number of encampments that you cleared when you were interim mayor, just for that 6 months. After that time period, you know, wasn't like homelessness precipitously dropped, right? I mean, the encampment strategy of clearing the encampments didn't automatically lead to sustained drops in homelessness. So, in addition to, you know, encampment sweeps, which you know I think your campaign has been in support of, what else needs to happen?
So 2 things. One, you know, clearing out 10 encampments isn't the end-all solution, and there is no silver bullet to homelessness. Let's be clear about that. However, what we did was we did it on a consistent basis, and that's what made all the difference in the world in terms of the 10 encampments on our streets. So we treated people as we should, with compassion and respect. But if they said no to our offer of shelter or housing, we removed their 10 encampments. I believe the sidewalks of our city belong to everybody. They belong to families, they belong to the elderly, and I don't think it's wrong for the city to continue to effectuate policies down that road. And what happened was, you know, after you encounter somebody the first time, did they move around the corner? Maybe. But after the 3rd or 4th time, we started to see a higher conversion into shelter and housing, or people simply left San Francisco. And ultimately, that's where we started to see success, when it was consistency. But in terms of the underlying issue around homelessness, we need to build massively more shelter capacity here in San Francisco. And I've been very public about saying we need to move from a housing first approach to a shelter first approach. I want to get people off the streets. You know, my North Star is saving lives. And for those that are on the streets of our city, whether it's suffering from drug addiction or mental health addiction or no issues, but you're just on the street, I want to get you off the streets and connect you with services and hopefully give you a chance at a different life. Right now, that's not City Hall's approach. And to me, that moving from a housing first to a shelter first approach should be the first step in that direction, to actually say, look, the first step is to get you off the streets, get a roof over your head, and then we can start doing other things to help you sort yourself out.
Do you think that, you know, families in very precarious living situations who are unsheltered or living in RVs or on the street in some way, do they need special support, you know, especially so that they can show up in the classroom, you know, prepared and ready to learn and not disrupting the classroom for everybody else?
100%. I mean, I don't know about anybody else here, like those situations tug at your heartstrings more than anything else I've ever seen. And so the support that we can lend them, either prioritizing from a shelter capacity perspective, and I know there's a lot of stuff talking within SFUSD about it, but that to me has to be a priority. They definitely, in my opinion, they deserve special attention, and we should be giving them special attention.
You know, obviously all the candidates have talked about public safety, safety on the streets. In particular, you've suggested that the National Guard be brought into the Tenderloin to fight fentanyl. I mean, talk to me about what you think the role of law enforcement is, you know, in the Tenderloin, which has a bunch of families and a bunch of kids.
Yeah. So I've been very public that the day I get into office, I will declare a fentanyl state of emergency, and that will do a few things legally. One, it allows you to ask the state and the feds for additional financial resources towards that emergency. The state's going through their own massive financial issues. I think that's probably the softest part of this equation. The second part is it allows you to ask the state and the feds for law enforcement help as well. As it relates to the states, what I've said, to be clear, was that we can't dictate what the state will give us. They could give us CHP, they could give us National Guard. We don't know what they're going to give us. We're at their kind of whim, if you will. Regardless, compared to some caricatures, they all will have to be behind the scenes. They can't be out on the streets actually enforcing laws. They have to be behind the scenes, helping with kind of strategic help. But the second part, the law enforcement help, is the federal side of that. And that to me has to be real. And that to me probably one of the more significant parts of that equation, because you know, the reality is we have over 95% of the people dealing the drugs on the drug supply side of the equation are foreign nationals. And we have to have deportation and the risk of deportation as an honest part of the law enforcement solution here. When I did a ride-along about a month ago at Southern Station, but we went into the Tenderloin, the guy was with the officer. He actually found someone kind of with the fentanyl backpack and had to write him a ticket. And the guy looked at the ticket, looked at the officer, started laughing at him, crumpled it up, and threw it on the streets.
Why isn't it more than a ticket?
Because it was, right now, that's the possession that he had wasn't enough to bring him in. And so to me, first of all, it's ineffective. But second of all, it's super demoralizing for existing officers when they realize what they're doing is actually not working. And so the big part of that, again, state of emergency to me is the law enforcement help. And then the last part is to reallocate existing budget dollars and financial and headcount resources towards that emergency. And what I've been very public about is creating one centralized intake center where we can take people that have services connected with that. So people, if they're coming off the streets, there can be mental health services, there could be drug addiction services, what have you. Because right now, I think it's quite frankly hilarious but tragic at the same time. Oftentimes the city of San Francisco engages with somebody right now and who's suffering from drug addiction, for instance, on the streets of the Tenderloin. And our solution is to rent them an SRO room in the Tenderloin and leave them alone. Taking a step back,
The solution is supposed to be their provided services, but I take your point that oftentimes what is provided in the end is a room in an SRO in the Tenderloin.
And that just doesn't, there's one hotel in the Tenderloin where 40 dead bodies were pulled out of that hotel last year alone. It's not working. Our harm reduction as the centralized approach to the fentanyl crisis is not working. It's not working for these human beings that are dying in record numbers on our streets, but it's not working for those, to your point, who are living in the Tenderloin as well. The highest percentage of families live in the Tenderloin. 2 weeks ago, I volunteered for the Safe Passage program, which is the nonprofit that essentially lines the streets so kids that go to school in the Tenderloin can walk 3 blocks to get to the after-school program. The fact that we have to line the streets and have a separate escort team is really, that shouldn't exist. But I'm glad it does today.
I asked Daniel Lurie about this as well. At least as I understand it, your children in the independent private schools, not in the SF public schools. Do you think that impacts your ability to lead on the resourcing of San Francisco public schools?
Yep, not at all. And to be super clear with everybody, we're a Catholic family. I was raised that way. I went to Catholic schools growing up, and my wife is Catholic as well. We decided to raise our children Catholic, and that includes going to Catholic schools. However, that does not in any way, shape, or form impact the fact and my belief that if we want San Francisco to be this iconic city that I believe we all think it is and believe it can be once again, we are all in the same boat. We have to have a great public education system. And I have a strong commitment to that. I've been public about it, both in kind of what I've talked about on my website and so forth. I'm happy to talk to you about specifics around that. But again, I want to be the most proactive mayor in support of our public school families our city's ever seen.
With our last couple minutes here, why don't you give us, your vision on using city resources and policies to support, the educational needs of San Francisco kids? You can lay it out for us.
Sure. So 3 things that I've talked about quite a bit. I'm going to leave a 4th one as a big asterisk for, quite frankly, everybody here in this audience and the broader group. So number 1, I know 3rd grade reading proficiency is one of the 3 pillars of our public education system. And City Hall, again, has been divorced from our public education system historically because of that separate structure of separately elected school board that runs the policy and the budget. But we also have a Department of Early Childhood in City Hall that issues tens of millions of dollars a year in grants for youth programs. And oftentimes it's become who you know right now. And what I've been very public about is saying that the first funding priority out of that department when I'm mayor is 3rd grade reading proficiency programs for our public school families. Again, I can't step in the policy shoes or the financial shoes of the school board, but I can sure as heck out of City Hall fund programs in support of our public school families in an area, 3rd grade reading proficiency, which is a marker for academic success in grade school and beyond. So I will do that. The second part to me is around the MTA. We've never had a mayor mandate that the MTA work with our school districts, specifically around bus routes and frequency in the mornings. I can't tell you how many friends of mine, whether they go to parochial schools or public schools, they get their kid, they use Muni, They get their kids to the bus stop in the morning, and then either a full bus drives by or no bus shows up for half an hour. And what I've been very public about is having that social contract with parents and families to say, if you get your kids to the bus stop in the morning, because I don't know about anybody else's household, that to me wasn't always the easiest, or still continues not to be the easiest, is that we'll get you kids to the school on time. And then the last part is around public safety. Now, I know, again, school board cut ties with the police department during COVID. I might have disagreed with that. That's their decision. But I also hear, again, specifically around public schools, a lot of families where they're encountering tenant encampments or street behavior on the way into school grounds. And now our youngest is in 6th grade, so we're kind of getting a little bit older up there with our kids' ages. But especially with younger kids, if you want them to absorb what they're learning in that school environment, I mean, hopefully they have some food in their belly, but they also have to have an open mind, and kind of dodging street behavior to get onto school grounds is not the way to do that. So from what I've said, and we banter around different ideas, we will have a priority 311 number next year. Any street behavior issue within a 1-block radius of our public schools will get knocked out in 24 hours. I want kids to have a very welcoming path onto school grounds. And then I'll just...
The asterisk.
The asterisks. Any and all other ideas that people have that I can effectuate as mayor, I will do. Again, for me, it's something I'm lucky enough to be born and raised in this city. We're lucky to be raising our kids here. I want to do everything in my power in a proactive manner that have never been done out of City Hall before to support our public school families. It's not to dismiss those where our kids go to school in Catholic schools or anything else, but from a public policy perspective, from a city resource perspective, this is where it needs to go from families. And that is my commitment. And again, I am a taker of all great ideas to continue to support our public school families and to really make a difference in everyone's lives.
Mark Farrell, thank you so much.
Thank you.